Welcome to Puck Talk CS. Steve, just take us away.
This is how I feel. I'm sick. I am sick to my stomach. This is our raw reaction coming out of game 5. Now, we knew coming into this one, this was a big one. Look at it. I'm so pissed off. Let's talk some puck. This is a tough one, man. I mean, we don't need to recap what happened here. This is a tough one, what happened here. I mean, this was a deflating loss. And this really changes the momentum. Now you got to go back. And not only that, but we play an eternity. You got to wait till Thursday. Maybe at this point, that's a good thing. But this is a bad loss. I mean, I'm sick right now. I am so sick. How you feeling?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Now, I just was consuming our guy Valley's View. I thought the whole panel did a phenomenal job for MSG tonight. I know you didn't get the chance to watch it. You hopped in here before I did. Um, yeah, let's start with the first period quick. Um, I think the headline of the night, I agreed with Valley. Shesterkin's performance is wasted. I mean, that was unreal goaltending. He was seeing everything. A lot of loud plays. Laviolette likes to use that term. Yeah, just some really good opportunities. The Gensel breakaway stands out. But I disagree. I do think the Rangers had their chances. Rangers Twitter, the cesspool that is. Valaket also mentioned it. And I'm sure maybe by the metrics it wasn't great. I thought the Rangers actually did have their opportunities in the first. Maybe they weren't grade A, but I thought they were chances. And they're chances that, frankly, against Frederick Anderson, I thought they could score on. How'd you feel, at least from that point right before, let's say before the Trouba goal?
Actually, I agree with you. I think the narrative was a little different from my perspective, at least. A lot of people, especially um, during the intermission on ESPN, saying, "Oh, the Rangers are lucky to get out of that one." I didn't think we played that bad in the first. Obviously, I thought we had our fair share of opportunities. I mean, Roslovic was cutting into the net. We were throwing them on there, and especially after Lafreniere's Game 4 goal. I mean, just throw the net at this guy. I mean, throw the kitchen sink at this guy because Anderson in the first did not look comfortable. And in the third, I mean, you might be. They might have said this on the post game, but I don't recall how many shots did we have in the third. I know we're talking about the first, but we had. I could only recount like 2 or 3 shots. But going back to the first, I thought we didn't lose this game in the first. I didn't think we were that lucky to escape there. They had some good chances, but so did we. It was to the second where things got out of hand, and I gotta say, I am very disappointed with Panarin. We gave Panarin the praise. Panarin these last 2 games has not been good with his -2 and his -3 goal differential. He has not been good, and other guys too, Chives. I know you're gonna jump in here in a second. I'm disappointed in Panarin. I'm disappointed in Mika, Vinny, Keandre Miller on 2 of the goals that Carolina scored in this game. There was no dogs that showed up in this game.
Yeah, I don't want to close out what you were saying because I agree. And I know a lot of fans agree. Obviously, the media agreed. We heard post game from the MSG panel, but I want to mention the shots on net because that stood out to me. They were even through 2. The Hurricanes outshot the Rangers by 4, 10-6 in the third period, and won the game in the third period. Now, I do want to mention the blip of hope. I thought the Trouba play, you're up 1-0. So before we get to that meltdown, where that was definitely on your star players, I do want to mention, the crescendo of how we got to that point. Trouba makes an amazing play, right? Blocks the shot. Carolina, this is a team I also want to mention quickly because we could go into all the fine details. We don't need to. This is going to be a quick go. Kuznetsov slashing on Gustafsson was a stupid penalty. Orlov's penalty on Fox was a stupid penalty. And then Roslovic gets caught at the end there with that penalty on Orlov. And I believe that's what led to the Trouba goal. If it wasn't that, it would have been later. But I think the Fox holding on Kakaniemi was after that. And the tripping was too late in the period from Cooley. So I believe the Roslovic penalty on on Orlov, who came out of the box, is what resulted, right? The Rangers had the power play. They're penalized. They go on the kill. They turn the penalty kill into a goal on true, like the most unlikely goal scorer, your captain, the guy who got shit on in the last game in Carolina. And that gets us to the point where I think we can start criticizing, those star players. And I think it's fair criticism. We've gotten on the pod before and talked about, you see in the Toronto series, Mitch Marner, Panarin was tracking Kuznetsov coming into the zone and gave that up. But let's start. I believe that was the second goal. Yeah. Jordan Staal was the first goal. Let's start with that. I had a bad feeling. That was a bad change by Mika Zibanejad. But even I felt we've disagreed on this. Schneider's played strong in my eyes. He's really stepped up. He's averaging 5 more minutes a night than he has in the last 2 playoff runs. He's playing second pairing with Miller. He was standing still. And I think that's what was concerning. Out of the gate in the third period, up 1-0. You score a shorthanded goal to take the lead. Igor is playing out of his mind. And you give up the game tire early. It was 3 minutes into the period. So, Steve-O, take me from there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Miller and Schneider both had bad games, both of them. I mean, you can't sit there and point to one person, but defensively, I mean, they were just caught there, just lacking and standing there on that particular goal. And when you look at it in the end, when you have Jacob Trouba score your only goal shorthanded, that's a problem. That's a big problem. And I want to go back to stats. I know you're a big stat guy. We came into the third period. We had 27 face-off wins, and
Yeah.
Carolina had 8. I mean, we were winning the face-offs too. And in the third period, completely changed. We weren't winning face-offs. And then we get the power play opportunity, and I'll be honest, our power play looked like dog shit. I mean, it was completely deflated. We looked tired. We looked very tired. There was really no adaptation throughout this game, and we looked out of sync. At most parts of the game. At one point, I thought we were just the Harlem Globetrotters of hockey. We were just chucking the puck around. Mika had a couple bad passes. Panarin. I mean, we've said this before, especially last year after our first round exit to the Devils. Those passes don't work, and we haven't seen those passes when it's working so well. But I'm straight up gonna say right now, Chavs, I think we're in trouble because you knew, and you said it when Jordan Staal nets that in, which that was a beauty of a goal. You knew that as this game goes on, and Carolina hangs in there, the momentum is on their side, and now they're coming back home. They're going to rally. And what scares me the most, Chives, I don't want to deviate, off. We're kind of doing like a timeline recap of this game, but I mean, at this point, that was just a shitful game. What scares me the most is Carolina is playing their best hockey now, and we looked like absolute shit.
Now
There's no other way to say it.
Let's pick up from there, because I don't think there's really a sense in breaking down the other goals. We all saw them. Let's pick up from there. I think you're right. I think what's dangerous is you handed a team that was down 3-0 in a series momentum, and I don't think they're going to play great at home. Well, let's say predictions for later. I think they're going to win it. I think they're going to win Game 6. My thinking was that if they won,
Rangers or Carolina?
Carolina. I think the fact they won on away ice, you won the President's Trophy. This gave you the advantage to have home ice in Game 5. You lost on home ice. You didn't get the job done. And the concern is now this becomes potentially 6 periods of hockey, if not at least 3. We know that at minimum 3 in Carolina, 2 days off. So this game's happening Thursday. Like you mentioned, I don't see it as momentum swing. I see it as 2 separate things. They have home ice, but you allow them to get in a groove. You gave players like Jordan Staal, who's been really a dominant. He's been good all series. Kuznetsov, he's another guy. He was scratched. He took a dumb penalty in the first period. He scores on an opportunity that our back-checking forwards should have had. Jordan Martinook. Also want to mention, if you can recall, I believe it was game 1 or 2 in the qualifying round in 2020. He scored a very similar goal where he wrapped around in front of the net and put one past, I think it was Lundqvist or Igor, and put them up 3-1 in that game. And that was kind of like a moment. He happens to always be there. I mean, we saw it in the Islanders series. And we pulled a goalie, empty net. That was, I think, terrible. That went along with what you're saying about the power
It was
play.
horrible.
But at the end of the day, like you're saying, I think the concern is that, to me, the 3-0 series part of this is gone. It is now
Oh, for sure.
it's a 2-game series, and that's where it's scary because it's brand new. Now it's a completely clean slate. John Gino put it great. It's tied 3-2 because now you're going into Carolina. It's stacked against you, and the pressure's now on you when the pressure wasn't on you. Right? All the pressure in the world was on Carolina. Now the pressure's on you in Game 6. It's not good.
Yeah, and to build off of what you said, what scares me the most is that in the when once Carolina got up 2-1, we didn't get a single opportunity left in this
Yeah.
game because you know why? They got back to their game. They got back to their blue line game. That's how they play hockey. And we were able to get nothing. I mean, that's the hockey we saw at the game that both me and you were at the beginning of January, where we got smacked 6-1. We had nothing. Very similar game to that to this point, but Carolina continued to come out hard, and you got to give them credit because they came along in the offensive zone with absolutely no challenge at all. I mean, guys like Jarvis, Natchez were coming in that third period. I mean, they were just weaving their way right through. And again, we look tired. I mean, there's no other way to explain it. Now, if you want some positives, I do think, they haven't quite pick their power play apart. They're still 1 for 19. That's a positive point to look at it. But I want to go back to your point. Yeah, all of us Ranger fans, that was a shitful game. Put that behind. We're still up and in control of the series. I think you said Gino said it's a 2-game series up to this point. I think you got to approach this the best way after such a deflating loss is you got to think you got to win Game 6, because if you go to a Game 7 at the Garden after losing 3 games in a row, the pressure is dialed up to the Rangers.
No, you know what,
100%.
Steve-O, I disagree, and here's why. So first, my take is that it's a 2-game series, and the reason I say that is because I just think that the pressure's on the Rangers now. Game 6 is where the pressure is. And I hear you that it's on them. Obviously, if it gets to a Game 7, the world's against you at that point. But it's on them in Game 6. And the reason I think so is because you're in Carolina. Like, it's coming off of the victory that got Carolina, that bought them a day to survive, like another opportunity. I think the pressure's on in Game 6 because I think if it gets to 7, now it's a 1-game. Whoever wins is going to the conference final.
Ugh.
And I know I accept your thought process 100% on that. I just see it as like Game 6 to me is the game that you can say salvage the 3-0 lead. You can salvage how you played last game, how you played Game 4 and came back in that game. I think if it gets to Game 7, it's just a 1-game, like, clock set to 0, series is at 0. Whatever happens tonight is what happens tonight. Now, granted, this is the mindset they're going into Game 6, but we know Carolina is going to be like the Coliseum in Rome. They got a gladiator, and they're ready for that dude to get right. I mean, they're ready for that dude to get eaten by the lion, man. So we know what it's like, and I think it's also hard because you think, Steve-O, it seemed like they finally exercised the Carolina for that brief time that Carolina was dominating us in 22. It seemed like they finally in Game 7 lifted that. They smoked them like 6-2. I don't think you're going to go back into Carolina and have a game like that again. I just don't.
I agree with you. I think the odds of that happening again are certainly against you. And go back to that Game 7. We got off to a fast start. That is the key to this team. I mean, also Carolina, they showed it on the broadcast. Carolina is a great team at home. I mean, in the playoffs these last like 3 years, they were like 4-16 on the road, but at home they were like 17-2 or something like that. It was noticeably different, and they are a very good team at home. But going back to this, Rangers didn't get all of these last few games. Carolina scored first in game 4. Carolina scored first. Or I'm sorry, we scored first in game 5, but it wasn't really a fast start because we scored with 5 minutes left in the second. So it doesn't matter. We failed to get off to a fast start. And again, the kryptonite chives, I'm telling you, to this Carolina team is getting off to that fast start. And what's sad about this, yeah, Igor had a great game in this game, but we look like the Islanders, chives. We look like we were just trying to ice the game and try and get Igor a shutout in the third, and that clearly didn't work. I mean, they snuffed that out in a second. So, I mean, it sucks that we got to sit here and dwindle on this till Thursday, but I think after such a deflating loss like that, I think it plays, a little bit in the Rangers' favor that you got an extra night to recover from that. What do
It
you think?
comes. I agree. I agree 100%. And part of that too, like you said about a fast start. Also recall in game 5, the Rangers lost in 22. And I hate to draw the comparisons, 2 different series, but Svechnikov scores on a breakaway. And that was the backbreaker. Why? The Rangers only scored 1 goal in game 5 when they went down to Carolina. We were down 3-2. They won game 6. Why? Because they were at home back against the wall. Then they went on the road, had the momentum, and won game 7. It's literally the reverse of what we're seeing right now. This series is the reverse of what we saw in 2022. Now, with that, I want to mention the stat. 3-0 series deficit. 1942 Maple Leafs over Red Wings. 1975 Islanders over Penguins. 2010 Philadelphia Flyers over Boston Bruins. We all remember that one. And oh boy, who could forget LA Kings over San Jose Sharks 2014? It's only happened 4 times in NHL history. So you don't want to
How
be
did
on the
that
other side
season
of
end
that.
in 2014?
Yeah. You don't want that. You don't want to be on the wrong side of that.
No, you
That
don't. This
stat.
would be one of the greatest chokes ever, but we're not there yet. Again, we're not there
Yet.
yet. I mean, I'm with you. I feel horrible. I mean, especially to lose a game like that. I mean, it's just bad. I mean, this would be 10 times worse than last year's playoffs. I mean, and they say it all the time. You come out 3-0. That one is the hardest one to get, and we just look like these last 2 games, especially this game. We look like what's the best way to describe it? Like, it's all right, we got it. It's in the bag. Like, we're gonna get this one eventually, and you
I felt
can't play
like
like that.
I felt like they were playing not to lose. Like in the sense of, you mentioned the 1-0 lead. They didn't really get great looks in the third before the goal, the 3 minutes before. And from that point, it just became a stale hockey game. There was never a point where with 7 minutes left, with 6 minutes left, you need 2. So you figure if you score 1 in that window, you can then pull the goalie and tie the game. It just never felt like at that point the Rangers were ever going to get back in that game. And I view that as objective as possible, right? But looking at the game, 6 minutes is ticking off the clock. Never felt like the Rangers were going to get back in there. And I think that's what was the most alarming part. Like you mentioned, the emotions, right? And we've been talking about it now the entire podcast. No matter what you read online, I'm sure it's going to encapsulate the same thing. But there goes my light. There we go. Yeah, that's how we're feeling right now. No, but honestly, I just feel like there's the emotions, and then if you really look at things, it's like the reality is I just don't think the Rangers ever presented a fight back, and they did in the game before. So I think that's where things are the most concerning.
Yeah, and what I didn't like was I didn't want to give this guy Anderson the slightest inch of confidence. And to have a game like he did, and I really don't think he played that great. I just think we weren't that good because, again, you could tell, especially towards the end of game 4, he looked like he was going to shit his pants after giving up that Lafreniere goal. And you could tell he when you pound him in pressure, you could tell you could rattle him really quickly. And we rattled him in game 1. We rattled him in game 2. And this game was such a deflator because now if they could get his confidence going and he gets going, it's going to even make it 10 times harder, especially if Carolina's on the ball and playing their game how they play. So as we move to game 6 here, Chives, this is going to be a very big question. Uh, who do you play in that last spot? You know, because I think, and I'm really curious to see what you say. You can't go back to Rempe either game the rest of the way. And quite frankly, I don't want to see Brosnitsky either because he's not going to steal you a game. If he's healthy, I think you gotta go with Phil Heedle. I just think Rempe's not going to give it to you in a game 6 or game 7, especially when the momentum's against you. And Brosnitsky, I don't know what he's going to give you either. And they mentioned Blake Wheeler. Blake Wheeler as an option to come in. I don't think we're gonna see Blake Wheeler again either. I mean, you see it all the time. Phil Heedle played in Game 4 and is sore, so Blake Wheeler hasn't played in forever. Who knows what a Blake Wheeler could give you? Chives, who would you go to in Game 6? Crucial Game 6.
I think
Big
this
decision,
is
man.
this is tough. You know why? Because like you could look from the outsider's point of view, and I do believe this game was on the star players. Like
It
to
was.
me, the depth guys did their role. The Wenberg missed again. You count the missed opportunities. Some of them came from those guys. Gaudreau had a good look early. Kako had a few good looks. Outside of that, uh, my gut says Brodzinski solely because he's the healthiest, and he's going to provide at least speed and some team buy-in play. Like I thought he played really well. The role he played, he was blocking shots. He was part of the play. It didn't feel like he was just out there to eat minutes. I would also not mind Rempe, and the reason is because I think with how the playoffs have gone to this point, if the chips are down on the table and they won 7 games with him in the lineup before, at this point now, it's a 2-game series. You can't go to, I don't think you can go to Wheeler. I think if you start doing that stuff, lineup mixing, it's going right back to what Gallant did with Dryden Hunt over Capo Caco in game 6, right? Like it's what it is. Like it's like just I think it's just poor lineup decision making.
Yeah, and Laviolette got desperate. Not to cut you off, but Laviolette got desperate in this game. At one point, he had Goodrow on a line with Kreider. Who was the other
And VC.
person? And
I think it
VZ.
was
I was
VC.
like, oh my goodness, like
Now, so
that's
here's the thing, though. Here's the thing that I'll debate too, and I'll definitely argue with is when the team's winning, you look at it and you're like, oh, that's a matchup based thing. But now they're losing the game, and it's like, oh, what's going on? I don't mind. I think the reason that happened was because he shortened up the bench, shortened up by not playing Rempe. So I do appreciate that you brought this up because it's going to be the hot topic in New York the next few days. Certainly in Carolina too at the practices is who's getting the reps on that fourth line spot because like you said, when you're losing or now it's game 6 and it's an urgent situation, are you going to be looking at the shortened bench like, oh, now we got to shorten the bench? Or do you stick with your guns and say this is what worked and we're going to shuffle some lines up and it's what got us through games 1 and 2, especially in the double overtime, and it worked. So I think it's like anything else. The NHL playoffs are result based, and I think for a moment there was almost the game 4 where they came back in Carolina was the rare situation where they lost, but because they came back into the game, it was a moral victory. You don't get moral victories in the playoffs, but that felt like one. The concern moving forward is now there's no moral victory, and now everything can kind of be spun like just like that in one bad period, one loss that lost you a game 5 on home ice. It seems like anything that we talk about, you and I, that we've gone over this entire episode, can just be flipped on a head. Get lineup decisions, the strategy, how they're adjusting. Even Igor's play, Anderson's play. We've talked about all things that to this point seemed certain, right?
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think the Anderson point is very valid, and it just makes me grateful that we stole Game 3. I mean, oh my goodness. I mean, some people say we stole that one. I mean, we would this would be a whole different conversation if Panarin doesn't put that in the back of the net. But again, it's so tough. I mean, these are such. What was the official wording with Heedle? Was he so sick? Was he sore? Do we end up figuring
So
that out?
Dan Rosen reported before the game that it was a combination of he was sick, like they placed him as day to day. He didn't feel well, I think, after like the team breakfast or something. And then on top of it, he was extremely sore from playing, which makes sense. I mean, the guy's been injured it's not like he had training camp and then slow regular season progress. He got thrown into a game and he played at the highest level with Stanley Cup playoff hockey. So that was the official word.
If do we know this? Might I don't think we might know this, but the sickness, was it like an illness, or did it have to do with the head and the like the that whole conundrum? Because if it has to
So
do with the head, I don't think we'll see him again. Um,
no, so the word is, which granted I agree, and that was the most concerning thing out of it. It's definitely, it doesn't have to do with that, but also the New York Rangers have never disclosed that it was a head injury. It's always been referred to as upper body injury. So that's very important because there's no conversation around that really. At least from my understanding. Now, I'm not in the locker room or talking to Lavi every day like I had been, but from my understanding, that's the situation. And, I don't think it has to do with that. And I think the point is they've alluded to like, if he's ready to go, we'll get him ready to go. I don't think it has to do with the head. So, yeah, I mean,
I think he's gonna play in Game 6.
you think so?
I mean, I think so. After the play, if he's good, given that he's good, because there were some promising things. You know, he was on the ice today, and he supposedly looked good today. You could tell by his line of work that he wasn't going to get the start. But especially with the extra day now, given that he did practice today, I think you should see him out there, and he looked good. Again, he looked good. The presser, his post game presser. I mean, he looked happy as hell. I would have never thought that he was dealing with an illness. I mean, you would never be able to tell in his post game presser, which really took me by surprise when I heard that. But I think you see a Hito. I would be totally shocked if you see Rempe. I'm actually kind of surprised with the way they utilize Rempe in this game. I thought he would be a little bit more physical. I kind of got the sense that Laviolette told him, they're so scared of him taking a penalty. I got the sense that Laviolette was like, no fighting anybody. We don't want to give them that momentum. I would have loved to see Rempe drop the gloves with D'Angelo. I think maybe that would have gave us the spark we needed. It got the crowd going because crowd really had a hard time getting going in this game. I mean, there was not that many things to cheer off aside from Igor in this game. But are you surprised a little bit taken away by the way Rempe was utilized?
I really like that question, Steve. You're hitting so many things tonight. And the reason I agree is because even if it wasn't Rempe, we saw Jimmy Vesey take on 3 Hurricanes in what was that, game 3?
Yes.
Why was there no fight from anyone? There's 6 minutes left. Why are you not
Barclay
taking
Goodrow,
you're not taking an extra
nobody.
whack at the goal? Yeah, but you know what, frankly, the shame is I don't think they were playing well enough to cause a problem. Like, I don't think they were getting the zone time to take a slap at Anderson and egg someone on. We know the Hurricanes were taking dumb penalties. They took 2 of the dumbest penalties in the first period. Borderline Tom Wilson level. Like the Kuznetsov slash was just dumb. He like cross-checked
Yeah.
slash.
Yeah, it was.
Orlov was like clearly going to hit Fox on an interference. I really admire that question because you had him in the lineup, and this is kind of his MO. And you're also so afraid of, I call them reputation penalties. Like it's a reputation penalty, but it's solely because it's him. Why not just give it a whirl? You're at the point where you're down 3-1. It can't really get any worse. And then at the point where there's 7 minutes left and there's still nothing being generated, as you mentioned, the broadcast, they were saying MSG's, it's like a library in here. Um, I don't know. I personally, I don't know if I would have egged necessarily been like Rempe go and start something, but I do think it is within question why the Rangers did not try and go the Hurricanes into any shenanigans, because I just obviously it gives you an advantage. Their power play was terrible tonight, but it's still better than I think kind of the lack of anything. Now,
5-on-5 too.
I also want to state Vincent
Disappointing.
Trocheck in the post game said that something along the lines of like they wanted it more in the third period, and that did not go over well online, as you can
I
imagine.
agree with him. I listen. I agree with him. I'm not upset that he said that, and you saw it right off the bat. And I said earlier in the epi, Carolina was getting in there, and they were getting in, and they were bringing the puck inside our defensive zone without any hesitation or problems. I mean, we gave them no issues. And after Jordan Stoll, and you hit the hammer on the head with him. He's been, and you said it, I think, after Game 3. He's been playing really well. He hasn't been able to get on the board, but that's what scares me. A lot of these guys that were quiet, Natchez, Martin Hook, a lot of these guys that were quiet have now put their mark on the series and have woken up, and that's what scares me the most going into a Game 6. I want to ask you before we go, Game 6 now. What is your one key to Game 6? Break it down, Chive style. One thing you think the Rangers got to do a better job in this game.
I mentioned Mika Zibanejad. I mentioned Alexi Lafreniere. It's the stars got to show up. Have to. Or I think this becomes a trite conversation. We talked about it against New Jersey. We talked about it in games 5 and 6 against Tampa. Have to show up. And we know what they're capable of. Have to show up. The key, again, I believe, will be how long Igor Shesterkin can keep them in Game 6.
Bingo.
Because you mentioned the kitchen sink. I think they're going to throw the washer machine at him too. And frankly, I think he's the key to the series at this point. He's been the key up until this point. And outside of the stars, I do think they're going to have to shape up a lot, because there was not a lot to display that was positive. The penalty kill was great tonight, and I think that's what stood out. But otherwise, I think it's going to come back to the spine. Shesterkin, if there's a time he can't fold, it's now, because of the rest of the team did in the last game. So, Steve, who do you think is not who, but what do you think is the key Game 6?
I'll give you quick two answers. Last episode you talked about this team having grit. Even the little things like Vinny T getting in people's faces, the penalty box. With the thumbs, getting in Aho's face. I didn't see any of that tonight. And that just went all across the board. We even saw Panarin be a little gritty. We weren't seeing that from anybody. So we got to bring that back into Game 6. And my main one is we gotta get shots on this guy Anderson. We had 17 shots, with 3 minutes left of the third period. You ain't winning the game with 17 shots. And again, this guy Anderson, I don't know how he's gonna respond to this game. He's gonna get a lot of praise for this game. Oh, what a great game by Anderson. 1 goal perform. Really, practically that's a shutout. 5-on-5 shutout. I don't think he's played that well in this series, and I think he gets rattled very, very, very easily. That Lafreniere goal, like I said, he looked like he was going to shit his pants after that. That was not a hard goal, So I really think you got to just get shots on this guy. Make Carolina feel uncomfortable. Get shots on this guy. You don't know what's going to happen. Look at Game 3. Vinny T throws in front of the net. Panarin gets a bounce. You just got to get shots on this guy. And if you could get on the board first, again, that puts Carolina in a very tough spot. And I think you hit the hammer. You hit the $1 million jackpot. And Vinny T too. They look like they wanted it. You could see they wanted it, and we didn't. It's obvious. Anybody watching this game, the third period, which is even after I'm surprised after the Jordan stole goal, or even after the second goal, you think we'd come out with a little pop. You saw nothing. You saw nothing. So I think that's what you got to see. You just got to get shots on this guy Anderson because again, you saw Carolina with weak shot opportunities in game one. They didn't win. You ain't winning this game with 17 shots. So I'll give you the last word here.
I think it's also you can't play from behind. I think that's an obvious one too. And you mentioned fast start. I'm going to echo that, Steve-O. You no more needs to be said about a fast start against Carolina. I just think let's see what this team's truly made of. From training camp forward, it's been we are playing playoff hockey. Well, we saw what the Rangers played like when they were winning games, but let's see what they play like now that this is not in their favor. And I think we can both agree with that. Moving forward, this is not in their favor. Let's see how the team responds in game 6 when, although they're leading the series, it will not feel like that tomorrow, Thursday night. So I think that's last word for me.
I think what's so interesting, a couple of days ago, you're sitting, wow, Rangers up 3-0. Boston and Florida are going to be the ones playing it out. Now Florida looks like, I don't know if anybody listening to this has been paying attention to that series, but Florida looks like they're gonna move on and finish this off tomorrow. I mean, Boston, they got a couple bad calls. I don't know if you caught game number 4, but Boston to me, they look like they got the calls against them, but they had nothing going. They look cooked. They look tired, and they're a very similar team to us when we're playing bad. Is they put a lot of pressure on Swayman. So I don't know if you want to chip in on that series before we go, but to me, Florida's got to be feeling pretty good right now in the position they're in.
Yeah, I do think the goaltender interference was bad,
That
but
was bad.
it really does look like Florida's taking it. I just don't know. Like, to me, the difference between the two Eastern series is like the Rangers to me have the star power and the grit and the goaltender to get back in the series. I think Boston as the goaltender, I just don't think they have the firepower up front to match. They have the grit. They just don't have like Pasta, Marchand, Pavel Zacha, who's never scored an NHL playoff goal, is your top center. Like, to me, it's just. And listen, I'm not saying it like, listen, we're on a podcast right now talking about how the Rangers are blowing a 3-0 series lead. But to me, just and outside of my like dislike for Boston sports market, love the city, don't like the sports teams. I don't think they have the extra like the Rangers have a guy like Lafreniere who scored 4 goals in 3 games. I just don't think they have that guy.
Yeah, they don't, and it was very obvious, especially with Marchand out. That's the main question. How will you respond? I mean, a lot of people were putting their feet up, down, up 3-0, and now we're starting to sweat. So we all get to sit here and ponder with our lives. Thursday, game 6. Right after, we'll either be previewing a game 7 or previewing an Eastern Conference Final series. What will it be? All that remains to be seen. Always remember, it's just the luck of the puck.